Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Iotunn, Kinship, out October 25th on Metal Blade Records. The album has 8 tracks, 68 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. They are a Danish Faroese metal band. When it comes to the design of this record, the biggest compliment I can give them is that they created an album design that matches the concept of the record in more ways than one. At first glance, when you press play, the first thing you're going to notice is the sense of continuity. The album doesn't feel at times like it has 8 tracks. It feels like it has one song. This is one song that has different momentums, that has different textures, that has different sounds, that has different ebbs and flows, if you will, that makes the experience overall very dynamic and very fluid. But it also allows you to appreciate the individuality of each and every single song, or like I like to refer to it, each chapter, because this album is really made out of 8 individual chapters that once you put together, you have a complete book. Each chapter, each track has its own story. It has its own way of starting, having a middle, and then having an end. Having this approach on the individual basis allows them to be able to be removed out of the context of the record, and you still feel connected with the experience that it's been given to you. Once you put it back into the context of the album, it's a piece to a much larger puzzle. So the album is designed in this format that allows you to go at it from an individual chapter piece approach, or putting them all together. Forget about the fact that there's 8 of them and just really appreciate the path and the journey that the album is going to take you on. Great design, really giving you the most out of this record, or offering you the most out of this record, and enhancing the concept of the album tremendously. As far as the sound is concerned, this is a very difficult album to define or to describe sound-wise. It's hard to put words into it because it travels. The sound on this album feels more than just cinematic. Sometimes it feels sci-fi oriented, like it's in outer space, like it has this ability to travel beyond the borders that could be put in, or the restrictions that could be put in on a song. Very often when you're listening to music, there's always a sense of a finality to where the sound goes. The sound reaches its walls, it reaches its perimeters, and it's contained by those perimeters, and you kind of feel like you're within this very, sometimes narrow, sometimes wide lane, but in a lane nevertheless. On this record, it doesn't feel like there are any lanes whatsoever as far as the way the sound is traveling. It just feels like it's open road, it's open space. The sound goes anywhere that it wants to go, and this allows it to not only feel boxed in, it allows it to dissipate itself at the edges, so it has a little bit more of a sense of spreading itself thin on the edges and a little bit thicker at the nucleus, which gives it great consistency, gives it great texture, and allows the sound overall to also be very layered at the exact same time. This also allows things to feel a little bit more polished, to feel a little bit more cleaner, to feel a little bit more precise. This is an album that sound-wise is just that, very precise, from the drums to the bass to the guitars, and even the impact on the vocal approach. Everything seems to be exactly where it needs to be. There is no accidents on this record. The album is meticulous when it comes to the overall production, when it comes to the overall sound, when it comes to the emotions that it's trying to transmit with the music, obviously with the lyrics and with the vocal performance that follows. The album sound-wise is one of the best that I've heard this year. It just has great quality. It has great experience, bringing elements of prog, of technical, of death metal, of classic heavy metal, and allowing those elements to paint a much more vivid picture of what that moment within the song or that moment within the record is trying to convey, the message, the imagery that's trying to put together, sometimes even creating some psychedelic pieces within the album that plays really well into the overall sci-fi feel that this record has. Guitar-wise is a phenomenal album. It's excellent. It carries a lot of the emotion. This record carries a lot of emotion all around, but I felt that perhaps the element that had it a little bit more at the surface was the guitars, at least from a sonic perspective, allowing you to feel how dynamic, how rich it is, from the more classic approach to the heavier approach to the technical approach. The guitars on this album are filled with life, they're filled with energy. They really feel like rays of light that sometimes shine a little bit brighter and sometimes barely shine, and that's when you have a little bit more of heaviness coming into the forefront. But the guitar sound throughout the album is impeccable. Now, the drums on this record are not overpowering, even when they are very heavy. Even if it's at its heaviest sound, the drums never really feel overpowering. They just feel like they're adding substance. They're adding a little bit of thickness to the overall volume and overall size that the songs have, because this album, sound-wise, is able to merge a more melodic, melancholic approach with a much heavier, more direct, more concise way of creating music. So it's an album that has a lot of yin and yang throughout, but it's able to merge them almost seamless throughout the entire record, and even on the individual basis as far as the songs are concerned. And then it comes down to the vocal performance. I love the fact that the harsh vocals, from my understanding on this album, really feel more like a spice. They're there to add some textures, to add some aggression, to add some intensity, to feel almost like an outburst. It's hard sometimes to keep everything within you, and there are moments where you lose grip on reality, or you lose grip on your own senses, on your own sense of self-control. And the harsh vocals on this record allow that emotional side of the album to come across extremely well. And because that side of the record is not always there, it's not an album that is always living on the edge from an emotional standpoint. If it becomes a little bit more sporadic, but it works extremely well because it becomes that spice that I mentioned earlier. The clean vocals are absolutely haunting. The clean vocals on this album just are mesmerizing. The way they come across on the songs, the way they interact with the moments of the songs, the way they express the lyrical content, the way they make you feel, the way they make you interiorize the message of the album, the way they make you appreciate the thoughts, and the way they make you think for yourself and create some of your own. I wouldn't go as far as to say self-doubt, but at least a little bit of rethinking some of your ideas when you're really digesting this record to its core. I think it's a great element of an album. Art should make you think. An album like this should make you ponder, should make you question things. And I think the vocal performance, as far as the clean vocals are concerned, checks all of those boxes. It allows you to feel a wide array of emotions and have a wide array of impacts depending on what song and depending on what approach they decide to take on the individual track basis. When you look at the way this album is put together, when you look at the concept, the execution behind the concept, the sound, a sound, like I said earlier, it's so hard to define. This is easily the band's best record to date. I mean, it's only their second album, but it's definitely their best record to date. But it's not just their best record to date, it's one of the best records of the year. It's going to be very hard to find an album with these kind of characteristics, with these kind of ideas, this way of thinking and this way of presenting it, with a concept like this, a concept that's deeply entrenched in the past, deeply entrenched in this almost prehistoric society way of being, humanity at its earliest form, but how it translates to where we are now. We're not that far removed from that, even though we think we are. So this album puts all of that into question, and because of the way it presents it, definitely, like I said, their best album and one of the best of the year by far. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with The Coming End. The drums on this track have a very heavy presence, and they sit a little bit more under a more melodic guitar sound that's very rich, very textured guitar sound that weaves its way throughout the track and allows the vocals to carry you and transport you, the listener, through the song as well. Musically, sometimes you feel like it is a very simple but yet textured and layered sound. That sense of simplicity that comes from the melody of the sound enriches the track, and it makes the track a little bit easier to digest and easier to navigate. mixing in some prog elements with some psychedelic elements, creating a very rich tapestry all around, but one that it's welcoming in the way you can appreciate it. A very rich sounding song, a very guitar driven and influenced track from the get-go all the way to the end. The vocals obviously add an incredible delivery and an incredible emotional delivery to the song. The drums are very powerful, and they're not overpowering, but you could feel the brunt of them. But this is a very focused, guitar-focused song from the start all the way to the end. One of those where you can really define one element as the one that has its biggest impact on the entire song. Next you have Earth to Sky. I love the intro. It has a very calm intro, and it's nice that it has a calm intro because this is a song that at times is not calm at all. It has a heavy sound to it. It has a heavy experience, mixing in clean vocals with harsh vocals, really giving you both sides of that spectrum and blending the both sides really well, creating a sense of an epic song all around in terms of the sound, the size, and then obviously that style of vocal performance, infusing some death metal elements into the sound, into the vocal performance, allowing the drums to be impactful, allowing the vocals to be very dynamic. And then you have another break in the middle of the track where you feel like it's the eye of the storm. Like this track is almost built like a hurricane, if you will. There's the calm around the hurricane, then you have the death metal influences that become the walls of the hurricane, and then you have the eye of the storm where there's that calm in the middle. Then it builds back up again into that more heavy, more profound, impactful, aggressive, intensive sound, and then the song dies out very similar to the way that it built up. So it's a track that definitely has a beginning, middle, and end. Those 3 points are really well defined as the calmer elements within the song, and then in between them, or squeezed in between them I should say, you have a more death metal style approach to the vocals and to the sound. Last but definitely not least, the Anguished Ethereal. This is a massive track, over 11 minutes in length, and I'm not saying massive just because it's over 11 minutes in length. It's massive because it is one of the biggest songs from a pure composition standpoint, from a vocal standpoint, from a design standpoint, from a sound standpoint. I mean, this is just an intense journey. This track is the climax of the album. This song delivers that the final moments of the record. It closes off the record, so it has all of the right elements to be a journey within itself, but really put a closure to what the overall path and the overall roller coaster ride, if you will, has been throughout the entire record. The most dynamic song on the album, the song that perhaps has a lot more melancholy than any other track on the record, a track that has also a lot of heaviness to it, blending really the two styles of sounds, or the two main polar opposite styles of sounds that we saw throughout the entire album, the death metal influence and the more proggy influence. Those two elements are clear the two dominating factors on this record, perhaps one more than the other. There's a lot less death metal on this album than all the other elements put together, but this track I feel like it really represents that more outburst, aggressive, intensive side of the sound, of the experience, of the record, of the concept, and then the more interior side of things, the more the more interiorizing of your ideas, of thinking within yourself, that more melancholic, that more deep thought process approach is represented on this track as well, through the sound, through the vocals, through the dynamics between the both of them. Great song, an impeccable track, just a monster of a track, if you will. This is it. Iotunn with Kinship, out October 25th on Metal Blade Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.